Responsible for turning football into the beautiful game, Pelé's contribution to the sport is undeniable. Half a century after his greatest achievements, the name Pelé is still synonymous with legend. Even by modern standards, his masterful dribbling, shooting, and playmaking still leave him ranked as the greatest footballer of all time. He elevated Brazil to the global stage, inspired a generation of footballers, and became the first global sporting star the world had ever seen. But just when the world was enamored with him, Pelé announced his retirement from international football in 1966. Underneath the decision were allegations of a dark conspiracy against the world's best player. Behind the scenes of Pelé's natural performances on the pitch, he had to fight for all his successes. Though he came to earn universal respect throughout his career, he had to overcome racism, death threats, and on-field attacks that threatened to end his playing permanently. From a teenage world champion to breaking an agreement for a multi-million-dollar contract, this is the story of Pelé, the Brazilian footballing legend who caused clubs, companies, and even governments to fight for him. Pelé was born into poverty in Sao Paulo, Brazil. His parents, wanting to impart him with greatness, named him Edson Arantes do Nascimento, inspired by Thomas Edison. However, this wasn't the name that would stick. Instead, it was purely accidental. During his early life, his passion for football had him idolizing a local player more than any other, a goalkeeper named Pelé. Because of his accent, though, he pronounced the name more like Pelé, something that quickly became associated with him. Pelé later admitted that he never liked the nickname, but it was too late. He was building up a reputation. Without any money to buy even the most basic of equipment, Pelé played football wherever and whenever he could. Finding his way to indoor football, also called futsal, he had his first taste of real success, winning tournaments. In his early teens, he was already playing against adults and beating them. His outdoor football club, recognizing Pelé's immense talent, arranged for him to try out for Santos FC. The main concern was his age. At only 15 years old, he would by far be the youngest player on the team. After seeing Pelé play, though, he was signed immediately and quickly went on to make his debut for the club 3 months later, where he scored his first professional goal. He was still training relentlessly, using a suspended ball to practice heading, working on the strength of his weaker left foot, and even training in karate and judo to improve his athleticism. Pelé's form was immaculate. With a relatively short build, he not only had explosive speed and agility, but had a powerful kick and a work rate. That made him an incredibly versatile player. His dribbling prowess was second to none, with a technique that resembles the style of modern players today, shifting his body weight instantly and taunting his opponents to tackle the wrong way. Media attention was building the momentum of young Pelé's career, which didn't go unnoticed overseas. European giants like Manchester United and Real Madrid attempted to lure him away from Brazil with lucrative contracts. Inter Milan came close to signing the teenage superstar, but eventually Santos FC refused to let him go. He was already considered one of the greatest footballers in the world. The name Pelé was fast becoming embedded in the sporting culture of Brazil. It was now a matter of national pride. This was something that would eventually come back to put his life in danger. Hype only intensified with the 1958 World Cup. Pelé himself was surprised to be selected for the national squad. A knee injury kept him from playing in the first 2 games. When he was finally fit enough to step onto the pitch, he proved that the selectors were right to bet on such a young player. He scored 6 goals throughout the campaign, taking out the USSR and France on the way to beating Sweden in the final. Not even 18 yet, Pelé had already conquered the world, winning Brazil's first World Cup in emphatic fashion. The nickname he presented had become a household name, Pelé. Some even referred to him as the Kind. But that fame would bring a new host of problems. His opponents were more eager than ever to knock the crown off his head, and soon they would get the chance. In his second season at Santos FC, he scored 37 goals in the domestic league. That was nothing compared to the following year, where he recorded a historical 58 goals. Pelé was barely 18 and already had one of the greatest football seasons in history. In 1962, 4 years later, he led Santos to dominate the first Copa Libertadores and win the title, a first for a Brazilian club. He followed this up by winning the Intercontinental Cup and the Taça Brazil. With an average of a goal each game, fans could be almost guaranteed to see him find the back of the net. Since Pelé stayed the majority of his career in Brazil, though, it was only during World Cups that a global audience had a chance to watch him play. He was injured early in the 1962 World Cup, and Brazil went on to win the title. By 1966, it was clear that Pelé was a marked man. Opponents targeted him with rough tackles, knowing that if they could remove Brazil's biggest threat, there was a much greater chance of winning. This tactic worked. Brazil lost to Hungary and Portugal and were knocked out of the tournament in the group stage. Some believe that a conspiracy was at work, especially because England were the eventual winners. On several occasions, referees failed to intervene or punish attacks on Pelé. When Pelé arrived back in Brazil, he was deflated by what he called unsportsmanlike conduct and weak refereeing. His experience in 1966 had turned him away from international football, vowing never to don the famous bright yellow shirt again. And when he was selected to play in the 1970 World Cup, he refused. However, after some persuasion, it was difficult to resist participating in what looked to be his final chance at another World Cup. Pelé was 30 years old and was beginning to decline. That didn't stop a multi-million-dollar bidding war over his endorsement and death threats after he made a public announcement. That year, the World Cup was held in Mexico, the first outside of Europe or South America. While many players struggled to overcome the blistering heat, nothing could stop Brazil. Just like in his debut World Cup 8 years earlier, Pelé was in exceptional form, proving to be integral to Brazil's wins over Czechoslovakia, England, Romania, Peru, and Uruguay. All eyes were on Pelé, so much so that Adidas and Puma signed a non-compete agreement to refrain from making a deal with the Brazilian, knowing that a bidding war could easily turn astronomical. However, Puma went on to violate the agreement, paying him $120,000 to wear Puma King boots, which would be equal to almost $3 million today. In the finals, Brazil needed to overcome Italy to win the tournament. Italy were two-time World Cup winners, had a star-studded team, and had narrowly won their semifinals against West Germany in what was called the Game of the Century. However, even Italy was no match for Pelé and his Brazilian team, who played an exciting, fast-paced football. Characterized by unrelenting attacks, fast movements, and stylish touch, Brazil fire-blasted through Italian defenses in a 4-1 victory. Unanimously, Pelé was awarded the Golden Ball as the man of the tournament. One commentator remarked during the tournament that Pelé was spelled G-O-D. 1970 was Pelé's last World Cup. Some couldn't accept Pelé's decision to retire from international football. He was aggressively pressured by the public to reconsider receiving death threats. As a national treasure, the Brazilian authorities even tried to force him to play. But just like on the field, nothing could bend his mind once he had decided something. Pelé's league career continued, where he was allowed to transfer to the New York Cosmos and spent 3 seasons cementing his status as a global superstar. Despite being in the twilight of his career, he won 2 American titles for the team and drew a record crowd of over 77,000 spectators in 1977. His last professional game was an exhibition between the Cosmos and his old club Santos. As the curtains closed on a decorated career, Pelé had won 6 Brazilian Serie A titles, 2 Soccer Bowl championships, 3 World Cups, and scored over 1,200 goals across all competitions. After his playing career, Pelé built his own businesses, became an UNESCO ambassador, and in 1998 even began serving as the Brazilian Minister of Sport. Under his leadership, corruption was reduced in Brazilian sports. During this time, he was also knighted by Queen Elizabeth II. Pelé is considered to be one of the most important athletes in history. He was included in Time magazine's 100 Most Important People of the 20th Century. His impact transcended football, extending to humanitarianism and politics. While he wasn't outspoken about racial injustice during his career, his achievements helped to break down barriers of racism in sport. Reflecting on his career in 2014, he said that he was racially abused in almost every game in Latin America. When Pelé died in 2022, Neymar Jr., who has been compared to Pelé throughout his career, led the tributes. Neymar also played for Santos and looked up to Pelé as his role model. A public ceremony was held at the Vila Belmiro Stadium, the home ground of Santos, to give hundreds of thousands of fans one last chance to say goodbye to likely the most famous Brazilian ever born. His mark on football survives in the style of play, the talent in Brazilian squads, and in the prestige of the World Cup.